Hi everyone, my next guest is Tuomas Malinen from Finland. He is Chief Economist of GNS Economics and also Associate Professor of Economics at the University of Helsinki. Welcome, Tuomas.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
And I asked Tuomas to join because his research covers economic growth and cycles, crisis, monetary unions, and income equality, monetary policy, increasing government controls. And this is a very important part of our conference. And of course, this can scare you. This can be scary, but we just want to have a better understanding where we are and where are we heading. So with this, Tuomas, would you like to introduce you in a few sentences? Why are you doing what you do, perhaps?
Yeah, well, where to begin? Well, I started in the academia right, like basically before the 2008 crisis, and I did my master's in University of Oulu, and then I went to University of Helsinki. My main topic was of the thesis was income inequality and economic growth. So the effects of income inequality and economic growth. But then when the 2008 crisis hit, on which I was actually warning my colleagues already in 2006. When it hit, the kind of another topic came as one of my main research interests, which was economic crisis, especially financial crisis. And then in 2012, after I graduated, or I had my dissertation in early January, and after that, we decided with a few of my like-minded colleagues to set up a firm, GNS Economics, just to see, can we forecast the economy with the models and the knowledge we had. And I've been doing that ever since, but I spent 5 years in the academia working both with the firm and teaching and studying. And actually, one of my friends, a professor of health economics, asked me about 2 years ago, how did I manage through that period? And I paused for a while, and then I said, I don't know. I was doing 2 jobs for 5 years, but now I just hold the title of associate professor of economics, and I work full time with the GNS Economics now.
It is nice to you, and I'm happy for you that you could create economic value from your research and from your hobby, maybe even. Okay, and now back to our topic. So, what is your current assessment of the economic situation in Europe? Is it a monetary problem, and why especially Europe?
Well, it's actually the situation is extremely dire. That's my take. We're recording this on the 22nd of November, and what it looks like to me and us now is that the long-lasting kind of money conjuring by the central banks, and the inflation they have created through it, then the energy crisis created basically due to the Ukraine-Russia war and the sanctions, and also the kind of a big changes in our global liquidity or credit market environment, are all converging to a point where we're expecting some kind of breaking point to arrive probably early next year, maybe even when this comes out. So it's just, there are many issues now currently really converging to the point where we can unleash this economic perfect storm, and it's looking really bad, to be honest. So, and yeah, and the situation with the energy market is very tight in Europe and globally also, but it's just, the problems are everywhere. That's the problem now, and people really, I don't think they understand how serious the situation is. And in addition, we have this really strange trend in the Western economies or in Western political systems, that it seems that most of our politicians have become completely dysfunctional, meaning in a way that they cannot defend their own people. They are pushing some global agendas which are hurting us. and it's really a crazy situation and very challenging for a forecaster, to be honest.
Could you please a little bit go more deep into this? Why is it happening? Or I should ask maybe, can the European Central Bank not save us? Or is this continuous saving of the economy, is this causing a problem after such time?
Yeah, I think this is easier if I show a slide here. Let me see if we find it. Yeah, here. So you see this?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the broad money as a share of GDP, and well, it's basically what the M2 or the broad money includes. There is cash, naturally. There are deposit accounts, checking accounts, and some money market accounts. And this is really a broad money as a share of GDP. And if you really look at this is the ending here is completely insane. This massive rise here, it makes no sense. And if you think about what the money conjuring of this magnitude creates, it creates enormous inflation pressures for the simple reason that now there's more money chasing the same amount of products, but also it creates a massive kind of asset bubble, because there is asset bubbles actually in all sectors of the economy and the financial markets, because there is just so much money around. So this is essentially the issue here. And I could actually show, and also the another graph here. So, and this basically shows the balance sheet of central banks. I think it's probably better.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, not one. Yep. So, what do you if you see the massive increase in the balance sheet of central banks at the end here? You know, the big rise, and it basically it created the massive increase in the M2. Yeah. And if you look at those graphs now, there are the balance sheets of Bank of Japan, Federal Reserve, the European Central Bank, and the People's Bank of Japan, China, sorry. And if you look at these graphs, you note that the global quantitative tightening, or the process where the central bank actually, the central banks or the global central bank balance sheet diminishes, is closing. And now it starts from a completely insane level. So if you look at these figures here, so there you can see that there is the balance sheet of the ECB is close to 10,000 billion US dollars. That's 10 trillion. And if you put all these together, you get a completely ridiculous sum of 30 trillion or something. So they have created this massive financial bubble, and now they're trying to deflate it through interest rate rise and also the diminishing of the balance sheet. And this creates a massive risk for the global economic environment. Do you see this one? This is the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve running from January 2018 till and this is a projection from till May 2024. We did in early summer, and you see the quantity tightening or the diminishing of the balance sheet here, and these black markers are situations where the markets almost crashed. So this is the first one in early January 2019, where the credit markets nearly collapsed. Then there was the repo market or the repurchase market blowout in mid-September, and then there was the corona shock here, which the Federal Reserve just massively increased its balance sheet. It basically, for a short while, it became the financial markets of the US. And this just to show two things. First, that even with very mild decrease in the global central banking balance sheet, the market just cannot handle it, because there is so much money, so much this artificial liquidity sloshing around. And then there is this like really insane support operation of the markets. And this just simply cannot end well. And now I stop sharing. So, and now what the ECB has been doing for a few months now is that they started the quantitative tightening, but then they noticed that, okay, the yields of the Italian bonds are going through the roof. So they started this, now I forget the name. It's such a cool name. Damn, I forgot it. Anyway, the ECB started, what?
Stability program or
it wasn't stability, it was something else. Anyway,
but they made a program.
Yeah. Okay, but they started a program where basically they sold or rolled off the bonds of Germany, Netherlands, and all the stronger countries, and used the income they got from those to buy the debt of Italy and all those. And this is like completely corrupted thing, because it's in the Treaty of the Function of the European Union, Article 123, explicitly denies or excludes all operations that support member states' fiscal position from the European Central Bank, or credit lines. And this is a credit line. But it just tells you the desperation that the ECB is under. So they are trying to get the inflation under control while they try to save the bond market again, the sovereign bond market of Europe again. So, and these just don't mix. They don't come together. So the situation for central banks is basically they're facing an existential threat, and I think that's a good thing, because the central banks have made a mess of all of our economies for the past 20 years. I think we need to get rid of the central banks. That's the most important thing. So they have corrupted the whole monetary system. I'll actually have a series of tweets and writings coming out on this issue in the next few weeks. So, but we really have to understand where the problem is when the crisis truly comes, and the crash and all that. So, and the Europe is the pinnacle of the problems, because we have the war, we have the energy issues, we have the Eurozone and the European Union corruption and the ECB, all that. We have these issues here. It's kind of, we are the pinnacle, we're the the pin that may prick the bubble or something like that. But this is a global issue. This is truly a global issue. And I want to show you one other. This is very important. I made the discovery just a few weeks ago. Something very worrying. You see this graph?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So what is presented here? This is from the Bank of International Settlement, this data. And what you see here on the red are global bank loans. Mm-hmm. And on the blue, you have debt securities, basically all bonds that have been issued. And there's really an interesting thing happening here. First, you see this is there. You see the 2008 crisis here. Mm-hmm. Around the 2008, and then the collapse in bank lending, banking crisis. And then you notice here that the issuance of debt actually surpasses, as a source of credit in the economy, surpasses the bank loans. And then in 2020, the global bank lending collapses and it never recovers. And this ending basically implies that we have been in another global banking crisis since 2020, and it has just been hidden by the central bank liquidity and the liquidity offered by the government. Yeah. So and this actually, when this comes out, we may already be in the actual visible phase of the global banking crisis. But this is the discovery of this was very telling to me, because we have been wondering why did not the banking crisis came. And I actually talked to one of our Finnish economist colleagues today, and she was wondering about the same thing. Where is the banking crisis? It has been hidden, but it has been there. So and of course this relates mostly to Europe. So we had a close call with the credit CIS 2 months ago, the near collapse of this Swiss banking giant, saved only by the massive liquidity support operations by the Swiss National Bank and the dollar swap lines from the Federal Reserve. So we are, in a word, we are in Europe, we are utterly screwed.
Nice.
Yeah.
But
nice way to put it.
And what I wanted to ask is this fourth last chart you show us. Is this data from the United States or Europe?
No, this is global. This is global. I can show it again. Yeah.
So if I try to summarize it in a sentence, so you are saying also that of course central banks in the last 1 or 2 decades, at least, they inflated always the markets.
Yep.
Now we have artificial bubbles, asset bubbles.
Yeah.
And okay, it happened before. And of course, we need creative destruction. We need a deleveraging of the economy.
Yeah.
So that is now necessary, and central banks know this. And now they try to unwind what they did in the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
So they increase the interest rate, they burn money. And then, of course, it cannot be a soft landing. It must be a hard landing because it's too difficult to manage this situation.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And then can they not save us again and again and again? So how do you think it will play out longer term, for the next few years? So what tools do they have still?
Oh, they have the same tools they have been using. Of course, the central bankers have been very innovative in the past few years, creating all kinds of new tools. But it is all based on money conjuring, basically. And the ultimate tool, what they still have, which they're still developing or in process of developing, is the central bank digital currency. And it would be a horrible thing if that would truly come to be, because it's basically the basic idea of a CBDC is that you have an account in the central bank.
Yeah.
There are like this kind of mediocre option where actually the financial institutions would issue the tokens, the digital tokens, and they would just have 100% guarantee or reserves at the central bank.
Yeah.
But that is unlikely to happen, in my opinion. So central banks will go to the option that you and me, we have a account in the central bank. And ECB is now talking that there would be a limits of that and this and that in this account. But basically what it would mean, that as central banks can technically at least and theoretically offer much higher safety than commercial banks. In the event of a crisis, every single deposit would flee, or let's say almost would flee to the central bank.
Mm-hmm.
And if that would not happen, through the CBDC, issuing it the banks, central bank actually would take over the banking sector in one way or another if the crisis is difficult enough. So it would just issue the CBDC into the banks to push, and it would become the banking sector. And that is where the CBDCs are going. And this is the craziest thing about this is that there are academic papers written on this, warning on this, warning on the kind of ghost bankization. Ghost bank was the former, the only bank and the central bank of the former Soviet Union. They are warning on this and the politicization of the whole banking system and economy in academic journals. And still, this is completely undiscussed issue. And this is worrying stuff, really.
And so if I go back to your last chart, and I see at the end that central banks want the commercial banks to create more loans to increase the money supply, but they just don't do it. That's why it was flat right?
Yeah,
right?
And they're
then,
probably because they are in probably in a crisis, banking crisis. Yeah.
So because bankers are always bankers. If they don't see that they get back their money, they don't give it away.
Of course
and
not.
And because of
And
that,
let me rephrase that also, that it also in that case that they cannot, because they cannot lend out more because they're already on the water with the law.
Okay.
That's because they operate in the standard business model but in a different sense, that when there's a factory building tractors, its output is tractors, but the output of a bank is debt.
Yeah.
And that is it's an abstract entity in many ways. So it's a bit different, but still banks are in the business of creating debt. Yeah. And at the similar way as the factory building tractors, if the business model is broken internally, so it cannot pay for creating more tractors, the same can happen to a bank. And it may be because they haven't got paid from the tractors they have produced and they don't have money to give out. And while banks can create money out of thin air, if you may, they still have the limitation of normal business logic, which means that if their losses become too heavy, they will go under. And if they're in such a situation where they see that the losses are mounting, they will not take more risks. They will not give out loans. So this is also it. And I think that's the explanation for the flatness or the decline in the amount of bank loans globally.
Yeah.
Since 2020.
And then my next question is that because of that situation in the last few years, we saw more and more, so less and less monetary side of the stimuli, but we saw more and more fiscal side. And then,
I don't think that's true, because if you consider the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, it grew from around 4,000 billion to over 7,000 billion.
That's true.
In 3 months. So that happened too. But what you may be talking is the 2020 government run. Yeah. And that was over stimulus in a situation where economies were closed, and it triggered the inflation crisis, basically, if that's what you're meaning.
And am I right when I say that, okay, central banks think that, or at least it's one possibility, they think that, okay, it happened before, asset bubbles collapsed before, but at the end we always inflated the system. Yeah. We can also do this now, but why should we do that with the methods that we used before? Now we should have a new method. We can have this new technology, the CBDC, and then why should we save banks if they don't create loans anymore? Exactly. So they save the banks, but they take over. Yeah. So am I seeing this correctly?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I think that's the kind of the final line of defense where they are getting.
And then at the end, more and more. So I think that the how can I say this? The interventions of the past, the continuous interventions, they cause the problem. But now we will have more and more interventions. Yeah, it will be more and more centrally decided what should be done.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is what is happening here now is, while the central banks are fighting inflation by raising interest rates, governments are issuing these inflation checks. And at the same time, when we have an energy crisis, they are shutting down nuclear power plants in Europe, decommission or denying drilling in Europe, in the US, further drilling of oil and gas, in a situation where we are heading into a massive collapse in the availability of the supply of this, let's say, raw energy. And this is they are like there would be the left hand not understanding what the right hand of government is doing. And I'm starting to think that central banks, well, they truly might be worried about inflation, try to get it down. But the governments are up to no good. Most of the governments are at this point. So they are really creating a situation where the inflation will not come down. And in addition, we will have a inversion in energy crisis in the coming years. It will basically eat away our living standards completely. There is a calculation done in Finland that if the let's say if the expenses of households increases by 500 euros per month or per year, per month probably
per month,
only 15% of Finnish households will survive.
15.
15.
15.
15. Not 20%. The margins are really financially, meaning they don't get into trouble and they don't have to sell something, or it was a very thing. And how easily you will get there with the we have the inflation, interest rates, energy, and everything else, food. Everything is the prices are increasing really fast. So we are seeing a kind of collapse of our living standards before our eyes, and people don't seem to get it. And so we are. It's horrible.
It's horrible, but it was always the same. I will ask the question: Have we seen this before? But let me tell you that I don't want to put words into your mouth, but this is how really the inflation is working. It will decrease the living standards, and the middle class will disappear.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why also my research is telling that, and then you say that the CBDC will also provide this this extra money supply, which will cause this
and complete control of banking system and the money.
And partially, the inflation is also necessary to inflate away the debt, or not?
Yeah, could be. Yeah. But it works only if incomes rise at the same level.
If
incomes rise at the same pace or faster.
Yeah.
So that's the requirement, and that doesn't always happen. So, and maybe there's one more interesting figure I think I would show. It kind of relates to productivity issues. So this is actually what we discovered some time ago.
Yes.
So this is a the growth of global total factor productivity. Basically, it measures the share of growth of gross domestic product not explained by investments or the changes in labor, or the quality and quantity of labor. So it has thought to be the kind of the proxy of technological change. And you can see here how this moves from early 90s. There's a Soviet Union breakup, it collapses, then the financial crisis, ISM crisis, tech bubble increases, then there's a global financial crisis, the growth rate collapses, and then we have this really strange, the great stagnation we have named it, where globally total factor productivity does not grow. And only reasonable explanation to this is the constant monetary meddling and all that, which created this kind of situation where the creative destruction doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
So, and this is a massive problem because it just tells us that we're getting more in debt. Our ability to pay it back, you could consider this as the
going down
profitability of a company, and it has been declining for a decade. So this is really troubling, and our ability, even when getting into this crisis, has been seriously undermined because of this. Our ability to pay back the debt has seriously been undermined by this, And now we have all these new challenges coming. It's a very, very troubling figure here.
Yeah, and if you put the demographics next to this, then
Of course,
it will be not more better. It will be not better.
No, it will not be better. Yeah, that's
okay.
true.
So yeah, we have kind of the situation is that we have to pay in one way or another. We have to pay for a lot of debt what we accumulated now, which is wealth taken from the future. So now it comes to the point when it is not sustainable anymore. I understand that it happened many times in history before.
Yeah.
There's what? Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, there's the last one figure I had. This is from the book of the excellent book of This Time is Different by Carmen Reidhardt and Kenneth Rogoff. This is a
this time is different.
What? This time is different. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I have this book.
Yeah. So this is the share of countries in external default. Oops, that one. Running from 1000 the beginning of 19th century, they'll turn to millennia, and you can see that there are really there are like three big default episodes here. First one is after the Napoleonic Wars starting around 1821 at the 5, and then there's also this is in the middle in 1880 I forgot what that is. That was the long depression era, which started from the US. Then we had the wars. And then we have the Great Depression and the Second World War, and then we have this is basically the crisis of there's several banking crises in Finland and Japan, and also the commodity crisis in emerging economies and whatever. But from this you can see that in these periods, close to 50% of countries have been in default, that means in a debt crisis. And this figure is if we go through the normal like economic logic, this figure will be much higher now. But this is nothing new. So we have been there.
Yeah.
You have the book.
I'm happy. Yeah, I read it. So it's a huge book. It's full of data, and I remember that, for example, Hungary spent its time earlier 1/3 of its time in default. So it's unbelievable. So it's normal. So what we can agree in that maybe in the next 10-15 years, the number of countries that have default will increase again. There will be a spike, but then sometime later, 10, 20, 30 years later, it will normalize again. We will inflate probably our debt away again to a level which is manageable. And then we chop off a few zeros from our currency, from our paper bill, if we still use paper. And then we go further. That's how I can imagine.
That is how it should go. But I have started to think of the Great Reset agenda here too.
Oh,
so if you consider the idea of how do we get people out from debt? So there is the one, you default, personal bankruptcy. There's the second one, that someone inflates it the way that your salaries increase in a way.
Silent default.
Yeah, silent default. Or someone gives you the third one, someone gives you a kind of a pardon from your debt. But as debt is always an asset to someone else, you need to give something in exchange. And here we come to the really interesting question that will such an option offered the households that we can nullify your debt, just give us your belongings. And then we get to the point where you own nothing and be happy. And this is far-fetched, I know, but as a forecaster, you need to consider these things. And the whole idea of a Great Reset is to create, this is just the public statements, is to create an alliance of governments and big corporations and the global players, or the big, like multinational players. And if you think about, you curate this structure, within there is a massive amount of debt, possibly owned by the very builders of the structure. You just simply give away the debt and suck away the assets to yourself and lend them back. We already see it in I don't know what's the situation in Hungary, but here in Finland I hear that we already have that some big corporation, or we have few major agricultural corporations, they are already buying farms and kind of renting them back. So we have the kolkhoz, what is it in Russia? Soviet Union called the system, where they didn't own, the farmers didn't own the land. And
we are. I think we are going anyway into this direction, because the higher size a company has, the more cheap credit they will get. So it's something what a one person company cannot compete with. So
and I think
give it time, and
and I think we have to kind of create already a counter attack against this through the normal market mechanism. Setting up our own farms, our own banks, our own companies, just keeping the small and medium-sized enterprises, really to keep them alive, and creating, if nothing else, then our own societies, because you can create your own money too and issue it. So what I'm arguing, that we have to prepare for the option that the governments completely fail us. Well, not maybe in Hungary, but in many places completely fail us, and we have to build a parallel societies to keep basically the freedom of humanity going forward. This is the ultimate scenario. But when you really consider all the things we listed in the beginning of this interview, if all things come to true, the inflation, the food, and the global financial crisis, and possibly even a larger military conflict, we have no option. Because the governments will only offer us the pardon from our debt and basically some probably basic income in exchange for our freedoms and our ownership, and that has to be met by another force. And this is something we have to prepare, because it really looks like we are going that way. A year ago, if you would have asked me, I would have been let's see. 2 years ago, you would have asked me this. I was thinking that it's a possibility. 3 years ago, you would have asked me on this. I would say, no way. No, it cannot happen. But now we have to acknowledge that all these things can happen, and we have to start preparing for them.
Actually, I cannot say anything against it, because you are right. We see really the signs, and there is one more option, number 4, to get rid of the debt. It is the productivity and to grow out of it. But we just discussed before that that's not almost impossible.
So that's not going to happen. We need the crisis for that to happen. So that's that cannot happen.
Almost impossible. We need
as close to impossible as it can be.
We need to find really something like a new energy source which fits into this book, and it solves every problem of the city.
That's a good point. If there would be a let's say breakthrough in cold fusion,
for example,
then it would be a massive increase. So that's always the option. So I dismissed you too early. There's always that. So we hope for that, but prepare for the worst.
Yeah. Okay. I think we discussed most of my question, and if I look at the time, we need to finish this discussion. I could talk with you for days.
No, I think
So-
we got a kind of nice conclusion. Not a
Yeah,
nice
yes,
conclusion,
definitely.
but a
It's a nice-
conclusion.
it's a nice point to finish. But how? Okay, we should prepare. But how should I? If we quickly can discuss, how should I, as an investor or as a father of a family, how can I prepare for this? What should I do?
Buy gold, buy land, start farming, basically, and they and create societies with like-minded people. So that's own societies, or let's say interactions with like-minded people, and start to think how you can create your own even small economies, if you may. This really can be done. It has been done many times in history. Like people have set up. There are currently many local currencies operating. All that you just need to understand. Everybody needs to understand that we, the people, are the economy. Not the government, not the central bank, it's we. And if we decide that we don't want this as a group, but we want this, it will happen. We can change the direction of the economy just by deciding that we will operate, we will do things differently. We cannot, I don't mean socialism and stuff like that, but obey the laws of the market economy, and we can change this all around. We have the option every single day.
And physical gold and maybe silver, right?
Yeah, physical gold, silver, and all that. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So because it's out of the system, not part of the banking system, not part of the CBDC.
It's gold. It's physical. So you need something else. So something like that. Well, that should be an asset, wealth asset for I don't know, for 4,000, 3,000 years at least.
Good. Then. Okay, it's a nice point to stop, I think.
Yeah.
And if people want to know more about your research, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can. You can Google GNS Economics, or then my newsletter, which goes under the name Tuomas Malinen's Forecasting Newsletter. You can find it on Substack, and I have also a very active Twitter and Instagram account. So you can find me easily. Just Google, you will find me.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.